the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
So, on the football front, something I've been thinking about over the last week, and I wanted to pick your brain on, is I think we're now at a point where you're seeing like Lenora Sellers, DJ Lagway. I mean, the Arch Manning stuff I think is silly. Like the amount of Arch Manning is in the top 5 of like just college football player lists going into 2025 is wild to me. I don't know how you can justify that when you're putting them all around people who have put on a bunch of elite college football tape, and then you just toss Arch in into that mix. But maybe they did that a little bit with Nico before last year, but I don't know. I think I've been wondering, because I'm looking at these lists where it's like Garrett Nussmeier, DJ Lagway, Lenora Sellers, and you go up and down the list and you're like, it's a lot of guys are putting ahead of Nico here in 2025. And it's not that long ago that everyone was looking at Nico coming out of that bowl game of like, oh, he's going to be the best quarterback in the SEC going into 2025. So in my estimation, I think the pendulum has swung way too far the other way, where I'm like, I think Nico is now getting underrated going into 2025. Do you share that sentiment when you look around the landscape of SEC quarterback rankings and just seeing where Nico's popping up right now?
Okay, I'm glad you put this on the rundown today, because I would want to say months ago at this point, I was on friend of the show, Eric Kane's Locked On Vols, and he was bringing this up as like, do you think Nico's a top 10 guy in college football? Like, where's he rank in the SEC? And, a lot of these lists hadn't come out yet from national media. And I'm like, yeah, he's ahead of a Lagway who's entering his first true year as a starter. Arch is going to be ahead of Nico naturally because of the hype. And I'm with you, though. It is a little much on him, but I do recognize he's a stud and is probably going to be really good. And all the reports are saying that too from Austin. So I was saying like, yeah, Nico definitely probably a top 5 guy in the SEC, fringe top 10 in college football. I'd put him behind Sellers, who I love, and probably Nussmeier. But outside of those two, and Arch, 4th in the SEC is comfortable in my opinion. Well, now you're right. You look at these lists, it's like Nico's not in hardly any top 10s. It's Lagway's definitely ahead of him. And that's one I really point to. Even like a John Mateer at Oklahoma, like I've seen.
Jackson Arnold at Auburn.
Yeah, that's a little, not as much, but yes, I have seen one of that. So yeah.
Pavia annoys me, like the Pavia one.
Yeah. If you're putting Diego ahead of Nico, come on. Like that's just that's too far. But you're right. I think he is an underrated. I agree with that take. Right now, as we sit here in early April, it feels like Nico Iamaleava is a bit underrated. And, I don't know if he's going to put up numbers like these other guys, but you look at the toughness he displayed at the end of last year and just another year in the system and growing into his 3rd season in college, redshirt sophomore season, then I think Nico's definitely going to be ahead of, or should be ahead of, some of these guys entering the season who are a bit more unproven, because while Nico didn't set the world on fire last year, man, he had some really good games, and down the stretch, he got much better.
Yeah, I mean, from the second half of the Alabama game on, he was good. He was not great, but he was good. I still think in year 3 here, the talent is still just otherworldly. Like Nico is, it's not like we saw a situation where, because I think the laziest thing people have said I've seen in the offseason is like, oh, it's a DJU situation 2.0 at Clemson. And I'm like, that's not.
Okay, time out.
Yeah.
DJU was he was the most scared quarterback I've ever seen play football that has gotten that many opportunities. He was like legitimately scared to do things. Yeah. Nico is not. So that alone, you got a fighter at quarterback. Like, yeah, he may not live up to the talent potential or whatever, but yeah, DJU, that is a lazy comp.
And he's just a gamer. Like that. Nico is a. I'm not selling any Nico stock. I'm at a point. Well, part of it is circumstantial too, where Tennessee's schedule, and there's a reason they're 9.5 over under tied with 4 teams at the top of the SEC with Alabama, Georgia, and Texas, and great defense. I think the offensive line's gonna be okay. I think there's a lot of buzz right now about the receivers. I think he's never had this much talent. He spends the offseason with Mike Matthews working out. I think Braylon Staley's going to be really good in the slot. You got Boo coming in, getting snaps at the slot. I think he's going to have a lot more juice at receiver. Now, they're thin, so it's kind of like Tennessee basketball, where it's like I think there's a chance that they're a lot better than what we saw last year, but they got to stay healthy because there's just not anything behind them, and you're other than freshmen, like true freshmen. So if they stay healthy, I think there is a real path to Tennessee's passing game and chunk plays returning to a good extent. I mean, Miles Kitselman and Ethan Davis, I think, is a more interesting tight end dynamic than we've seen at any point in the Heupel era. Two very different skill sets, but two guys who could also really help Nico when things aren't great with the receivers or this, that, and the other. I don't know. I think people have really overreacted to Tennessee last year, and I think a lot of it got unfairly put on Nico. And it was like, look, the tackles couldn't block. The offensive line was bad. You're having to live in 12 personnel. And when Nico had a 4-touchdown, 400-yard game against Kentucky that was taken away by 2 bad drops by the receivers. Yes. And that game would have been very different, I think, for Nico and how people viewed him if that happened. And had some absolute dimes, like the one to Thornton in the Alabama game, one of his all-time best. Like, the darts he was throwing early against UTC and Kansas, I understand who it was against, but like, that will eventually, I think, pop up against better teams. It's there. Like, that stuff is there. I have a hard time believing Nico's not going to be really good this year. And I think the people like DJ Lagway, let's see if he can stay healthy. Lenora Stellars, South Carolina's got a brutal schedule, and they don't have the personnel that Tennessee has in 2025. I look at just how people are looking at him. I'm like, Garrett Nussmeier was a turnover machine. And I'm like, Nico's not a turnover machine. I don't know. Like, I just think there's a lot, like Jackson Dart, I would take over Nico last year. I mean, Jalen Milroe, you look at that, I'm like, I was not a Jalen Milroe guy. He's not going to. Nico is absolutely still in the first round conversation after this year, depending on how it goes for him. And there's a reason for that. And I think people have gone way too far on Nico nationally. And I think there's never been a better time to gobble up some Nico stock from all the folks nationally have kind of soured unfairly.
Right. Yeah, it'd be tough for him to put himself in any sort of first round discussion given the talent Tennessee has.
You think it'd be tough?
Yeah. Just because I don't see how Nico can just have a great season numbers wise statistically with the supporting cast he has.
I think this offense and the situation that he's in, it would not be surprising if Mike Matthews breaks out. Let's just say Mike Matthews breaks out.
A lot, though. Yeah.
I don't think it's asking a lot for one of these guys to break out as a star.
And Nico's not a guy who runs a lot either. So
I think that's changing. I think now that you have,
it was the only thing working for Tennessee in a couple games last year. So
I think I think you and I talked about this where part of the Heupel offense, like the quarterback has to run. Like, part of what made Hendon Hooker so good, and Hendon Hooker being the best quarterback for Tennessee in the 21st century, is that he was so efficient, but he was also so good at knowing when to take off. He didn't throw picks. He super accurate, but it was something that, like, against Florida, he was huge on the ground. Alabama, he was huge on the ground. He really saved his big running moments against big competition. But I do think Nico is a willing runner, where Joe was not a willing runner. Like, that, for whatever reason, Joe just wouldn't do it, even though he had the body type for it and all that. Like, that, it is what it is. Nico is a willing runner. Nico, that dude is a warrior. Cracking helmets and just what he was doing down the stretch for Tennessee, like, that guy you want to go to war with. And I just look at Nico in terms of running the football and what we saw in that Iowa game, where he ran a bunch early on against a really good Iowa defense in that Citrus Bowl a year and a half ago. I just think now that you have Jake Merklinger, who by all accounts is taking a step forward here this spring, and you have another scholarship quarterback behind him and a true freshman, George McIntyre, you have 2 scholarship guys now behind Nico. Last year it was a walk-on and Gaston Moore behind Nico, and it was his first year starter. My suspicion is part of the reason that you protected Nico as much as you did running the football last year, especially early on, was because you didn't want to be in a situation where you had to go to Gaston and have a walk-on quarterback when you have CFP expectations with the kind of schedule they had. Like, my gut is you're going to run the ball more with Nico next year because you feel better about what you have behind him if he does get banged up. And it's not a season ender if Nico gets banged up for a little bit and you're like, oh, what do we do? And it's like, I think there will be trust that Jake could handle it if it came to that. It's not, you don't want that to be the situation. You want Nico to be healthy and all that. But I do think they're deeper in that quarterback room now. That my gut is you're going to see Nico like against Syracuse out of the gate. I think Nico's going to run a lot.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would champion that, and it makes sense that Tennessee would choose to do that more. And the loss of Dylan Sampson as well. Just adding that in there as far as the running game for Tennessee and how it's going to take a hit. Nico helping fill that void a bit would be a good idea.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.